UNSW Diversity Week and UNSW Postgraduate Council is pleased to host a special panel discussion on empowering women leaders in STEM and entrepreneurship with 4 amazing speakers today that are all successful in their fields. This event aims to address common social norms surrounding women in workplace and highlight practices that we can implement to encourage greater female diversity. I'm your host today. My name is Emmy, and I'm a counselor at Postgraduate Council.
Thank you, Emmy. And before we begin this mega event, I would like to invite Uncle Lloyd Walker, an elder from the La Perouse Aboriginal community and representative of the Gajuga Foundation, who has recorded a Welcome to Country for All Diversity Fest events.
Nangen Bai, Nangen Lloyd Walker, Gamarina, Darolanga, Galaguburu, Nurana, Nai. I said my name was Lloyd Walker. I'm speaking in Darawal, the local Aboriginal language of this area, and we're standing on Gadigal land. I'd like to pay my respects to elders, past, present and emerging. On behalf of La Perouse Aboriginal community, I welcome you all today. My grandfather's grandmother, Mary Russell, was from coastal Sydney, and my grandfather's grandfather, Joseph Dixon, was from the Illawarra. In 1883, relocated Aboriginal people to the La Perouse Aboriginal camp, which later became the La Perouse Reserve. 137 years later, we're still on our traditional lands, and hoping to stay on there 137 years more. Once again, on behalf of the La Perouse Aboriginal community, I welcome you here today, so you can enjoy your Diversity Week at this magnificent university. I'd like to personally wish everyone the best for their future endeavours, and Nana Wabi, which means I'll see you later.
Brilliant. And also, we would like to let everybody know that this Zoom session will be recorded and posted later on our YouTube channel. So if you are not comfortable with sharing your video, you can turn the video off on Zoom. And another thing, just to make sure that the session goes smoothly, is that if you are not speaking and you are not participating, you can turn off your mic so that the connection would be very well for everybody.
Brilliant. So as this is a virtual panel discussion, and I'm sure you're all very excited to ask our panelists loads of questions. So we have this QR code on the slides right now, upcoming guests. So through this QR code, you're encouraged to type in your questions from your phone or from your laptop. And this platform will link you and allows you to drop your questions throughout the whole session. And reaching almost to later after our panelists have introduced themselves, we'll start the questions. And yeah, your questions will be asked. It will be answered.
Yeah. So let's get this session started. So first, let us introduce all the panelists. We'll have the panelist introduction as well. So today we are joined by Maria Kavallaris, who is the head of research engagement at Children's Cancer Institute. Laia Fernández, who is the founder of Be Alarm, and Dominick, who is a software engineer at Google, and lastly, but not least, Claretta DSouza, who is a business development manager at Burnet Institute. So following, let's use our Zoom reactions button to give a round of applause and also give different reactions at every, to basically thank our panelists. So first, let's have Maria to introduce yourself. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm on the land of the Gadigal, Bidjigal and Birrigal clans that were never ceded. So early in my career, I would see these amazing role models and leaders and wonder how they got there. And I guess people look at me now and think, well, how did I get here? So I thought I'd just quickly give you a journey of many years of work. Look, I always had an interest in science, and at the age of 15, I left year 10 to go to TAFE to train as a pathology technician. As you can imagine, without experience and being so young, I struggled to get a pathology job. Who was going to trust anyone with their blood, really? In life, where one door closes, another I started part-time as I needed to support myself. So after 2.5 years at the University of Sydney, I landed a position at the University of New South Wales in a cancer research laboratory before being recruited to the newly opened Children's Cancer Institute. There I completed my undergraduate and postgraduate degrees part-time, and I had a wonderful female role model as my supervisor. I then moved to the USA, where on a World Health Organization fellowship to train really with an outstanding female scientist and mentor at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, New York. Despite being offered an excellent research position in the USA, Australia was home, and I wanted to bring back the knowledge I gained. So returning to the Children's Cancer Institute, I established a research program to understand how cancer grows and spreads, and to develop effective and less toxic therapies using nanotechnology. So in my various roles, I've had the privilege of mentoring the next generation of researchers, building research capacity and contributing to high-level government research policy. I now lead the Translational Cancer Nanomedicine theme at the Institute, the Tumour Biology and Targeting Group, and serve as Executive Head of Research Engagement at the Children's Cancer Institute. And in my spare time, I also am the founding director of the Australian Centre for Nanomedicine. So it's a great honour to be here this evening.
Great. So thank you so much, Maria. And let's invite Laia to tell us about herself and her career journey.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. So my name is Laia, and I'm the co-founder of BLM and founder of Branding Connection. I'm currently based in Bali, although I'm from Barcelona, and so I run both of my businesses from here. I've started my entrepreneur journey about 3 years ago when we co-founded BLM, a retailer of eco-friendly amenities for businesses within the hospitality industry. And then last year, in the middle of the pandemic, I founded Branding Connection, which is a marketing agency focused on mostly branding and strategy. However, prior to that, I used to work in London for marketing as brand manager for a large multinational. And although I absolutely love my job, I always knew there was something there that wasn't quiet for me. However, I do not think I would be here today if I hadn't gone through that experience and if I hadn't had the amazing mentors I had back then. And so, as I mentioned before, entrepreneurship hasn't always been the easiest route. And there have been so many challenges and learnings over the last few years. So I'm a graduate in law, so I wasn't really familiar on anything business related when I started out. However, it's been a great journey so far.
Thank you, Laia. Your journey is truly inspiring. So now let's have Dominick on the stage.
Hi, everyone. I'm also speaking to you from Gadigal land, and I'd like to pay my own respects to elders past, present, and emerging there. I'm a software engineering manager at Google Australia, and I work on Chrome, our web browser, and I've been at Google for 6 years now, which seems both like not a lot of time, but also a very long period of time. And I came to Google via a PhD in machine learning at the University of Sydney and the University of California at Berkeley. Something that I spend quite a lot of my time on is outreach work and trying to focus on the problem of improving the representation of underrepresented groups in the industry. And it's a problem that has sort of wide and deep roots. It's a very difficult one to tackle. And this sort of stemmed from, noticing kind of early on in my university career where I sort of almost accidentally chosen to go into computer science, having not really studied it at school, noticing at that point that it was really quite lopsided in terms of diversity. And also that I had been the recipient of a significant amount of both fortune, but also just having my path not questioned or made more rocky or more difficult because of my gender and my background and so on. And so a lot of what I was sort of noticing are these systemic barriers that stop folks from being able to participate, from being able to achieve their potential. And so nowadays, I spend a bunch of time looking at what are ways to help encourage folks to study computer science who otherwise might not have studied it, how I can support the underrepresented folks on my team and teams surrounding me, both mentor and sponsor them, give them the confidence and the opportunities to realize their potential. And looking at in kind of the longer term, what are ways that we can bring ourselves and this particular industry to a better place in terms of representation, in terms of the people whose ideas are being heard, who are leading, who are able to contribute, and who ultimately are helping design and make some of the things that each of us take for granted each and every day. So that's a brief bit from me. And I just also want to say that it's just a complete honor to be here amongst these three other tremendous panelists. It is just amazing to get to share the stage with them. So thank you for having me here.
Great. Thank you so much, Dominic, for sharing yourself and a bit of your introduction. And it's really great to have you here as well. And finally, we have Claretta.
Hey, hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm coming to you from the Kulin Nation of Melbourne, the traditional land of the Woiwurrung people of the Wurundjeri tribe. And thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I started my career in the Middle East, in Dubai, where I grew up. And that was as a consultant, a management consultant for ISO standards in diagnostics and testing laboratories. I moved to Australia in 2009 to do a master's so that I could qualify for a PhD. And this was at La Trobe University in Melbourne, and I was there for about 8 years. Having finished my master's, worked as a research assistant for a while, and then finished my PhD there. In about the second last year of my PhD, I was involved with the IMNIS program, which I think many of you possibly are. And I had an industry mentor, and this whole new world of the biotech industry was opened up to me, and I really felt my calling there. And soon after the completion of my PhD, I started working at MTP Connect, which is the Australian federal government's growth center for the medtech and pharma industry. I was there for about a year, and due to a whole bunch of political reasons, given the change of government that we had around 2009, I moved to AusBiotech, and I was there for 2 years. AusBiotech is the peak body for biotech industry in Australia. And very recently, being one of the original pandemic hires, I started work on the day the pandemic was declared in March 2020 at the Burnet Institute. And what a time to join an institute that is all about public health. It has been nonstop since then. And I am involved in a variety of different projects across the institute. Development of a COVID vaccine, development of public health programs that have been adopted by the Victorian government. Assuming you've heard a lot about the Burnet Institute's contributions to the modelling that has led to the map out of the lockdown for Victoria. And that's kept us busy for the last 18 months. So I still feel like I'm quite early in my industry career. So there's not much more I can add to this.
Thank you, Claretta. And let's thank all panelists for sharing their stories. So please leave reactions on Zoom if you are enjoying this event. So the stage is live now. And just to remind everybody, we accept questions from the audience. So to pop your questions, you can take your phones and scan this QR code, and you'll be directed to the platform where you can leave your questions anonymously.
Round face and look like a baby like me. But there's this perceived notion that, what does she know? So I feel like women have to go above and beyond to prove themselves. They have to go an extra mile to prove their worth. That being said, I feel like we also, in the research area at least, is extremely female dominated. So I have had the privilege of being led by some pretty outstanding women, and that has shaped who I am as a female leader as well. And I think that these are challenges that you can overcome with a little bit of help and mentorship. But also, we should work harder on addressing some of these issues at, the grassroots levels, starting with the pink and the blue, that we start with babies, and moving on to how we address toddlers, and how we ask kids, oh, do you want to be a doctor, and tell the boys, do you want to be an engineer, and things like that. So just at the grassroots level, I think.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing on that side. I would also like to hear on Dom's side, because you're the only male identifying leader today with us. So I'd like to hear your opinion on this question.
Yeah, so for me, often the perspective that I'm coming here from is, I'm seeing these issues being encountered by, say, people who are on my team or around me, in terms of getting, even in terms of when you have somebody on a particular project and you put them in a position of responsibility, seeing some of the roadblocks that they come across. It's sort of my role to help kind of not only open doors, right, but make sure that the environment around them is sort of conducive to them being able to lead and take the responsibility and succeed. There's no point putting somebody in a situation where they've got no chance in essence. And I guess the kind of flip side of that, and this is sort of referencing a kind of question in that was raised in the chat there. I think what you find in a lot of industries that are dominated by one particular group is that you kind of end up with a bit of groupthink in a way. You end up with a bunch of ideas that are all kind of very similar, and you don't end up sort of accounting for the diversity of potential use cases out there. One interesting example from Google, this is not gender-based, but it's sort of more just human-based. I think it was possibly YouTube, they found that about 10% of videos at one point kept being uploaded upside down, and they weren't quite sure why until they realized about that percentage of the population is left-handed. But no one on the team was left-handed, and so it worked perfectly for them. But for people who hold the camera with their other hand, opposite orientation, you end up with the video the other way around. And so that kind of blindness, right, to the issues, to the experiences of people who have different kind of properties to yourself, is something that is sort of not like, it's not something that kind of personal, like it's not something that personally affects me, but it affects, the quality of the things that we build, but also who we can serve. The access of technology to people really depends on making sure that we have representation on the side of creating it, so that we're actually taking into account the the multiplicity of use cases that are out there for people of or genders or ethnic backgrounds. There's a lot of recent talk, for instance, about photos and a lot of computational photography, right? And the fact that it tends to work better for people of certain ethnic backgrounds than others. And that's another example where we see the lack of diversity in creating these products having real ramifications for people in their everyday use of it.
Thank you, Dominic. And I think the next question we have prepared is very related to what you just said. So this is also open for other panelists as well. Have you ever experienced resistance when leading men or communicating with male colleagues or clients? And if so, how did you deal with it?
I probably would like Laia to speak about this question. Yeah.
So I have unfortunately been there, and in the sense of course, I do lead a team of people that I try to make as diverse as possible. And I have been in instances where my leadership has been questioned by a team member, a male, just simply for the fact that I was a female. And in terms of how you deal with that, I think there has to be a lot of communication and education, but also from a leader's perspective, I've had to set certain boundaries. So there's no stepping in from any of the team, but lots of communication, lots of educating. I've also run into times where males are not even aware that they are putting us in that uncomfortable situation. And I think speaking up about it and talking and having uncomfortable conversations, it's the only way that we can get to a better place with this issue.
Yes, totally. 100% agree with you. Always happens sometimes, especially when you're like doing on some like more leadership roles. Yeah, so I'd like to hear one more panelist on this question. Maria, I see your hands up.
Hi, look, I think it's interesting. I think sometimes getting your voice heard in meetings can be a real challenge. And I've always sort of, because I think there's a number of factors. There's physiological factors. Men have got much deeper, often louder voices, but and sometimes can talk over people. And I think I experienced this probably more earlier in my career. A little bit less so now, but I've sat on a lot of panels, it does happen. And sometimes also that need where you come up with an idea and then it sort of almost gets ignored, and then someone else, usually a male, says the same thing, and then somebody goes, oh, that's a great idea, and you don't know why that happens. I don't quite understand why it happens, but it does happen at times. And I think, it's about I guess, correcting people sometimes and saying, really, I think pushing forward with your ideas. And the other thing I also found is when you've got something difficult that you're going to get across at a meeting, and this is something I guess I was mentored about, is go and get the support you need before you get to a meeting. And that way you have a much stronger voice than you think in those situations. But yeah, look, I've been fortunate that people I've hired, males that I've hired have not been like that. It's probably been more in situations where I've been on committees where I've seen that type of situation.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing. Dominic, I see your hands up.
Yeah, and I guess I can come at this again from the other kind of angle here. And I think something that I think is really important, right, is that there's this general burden of being underrepresented when you're sort of asked to solve all of your own problems, and it kind of just compounds the challenges that you face when you're already a minority group in a particular industry and you're forced to solve all of your own problems just on top of that. And so I think another kind of really important role that people like myself play, like I really try to bring up people. And when I see that an opinion is sort of being said by somebody and it's not being recognized, using my own voice to amplify theirs. So I'm taking a very active role in making sure that, you know, it's recognized where these things are coming from, where the ideas are coming up, and getting that through. And I think this is sort of a kind of general strategy that can help in a lot of places. The analogy I've heard is that of a difficulty anchor, where sometimes, and this was kind of mentioned in the chat there, sometimes it's just not safe for you in a particular circumstance to rock that boat, right? To push back against somebody who might have more power or more influence, or be part of a majority group and you're in a minority group. And really the best way to kind of address that in some circumstances is to find a champion of your own who does have more power, who does have more privilege, who is able to lend that to you. In those circumstances, you're able to share the burden, as it were, and find folks who are able to help kind of carry you past a situation where it might not actually be very safe for you to actually risk yourself in the same way. So I think in general, like, it's very important that it's not just on underrepresented folks to represent themselves and change the context that they're in by themselves. It's very important for folks who are in the majority to lend privilege, to open doors, to provide sponsorship, to do all those sorts of things, to help overcome issues like this. It happens all of the time, and it's incredibly frustrating to see.
Yeah, that's true, Dominic. And I do agree that, yes, we can say that starting with small changes in the behavior can actually amplify the voice of female identifying people and colleagues. I would like to hear from Claretta. You have your arm, hands up.
Yeah, so I don't think there's any woman who hasn't had this issue. It comes up all the time. And I think one of the things that has worked for me personally is to call it out. Just call out the behavior when you see it, especially if you're in a position of leadership, but do it in a kind way, because like Maria said, a lot of people don't know what they're doing until you bring it to their notice. But most people are amenable to understanding where they've gone wrong and changing their behavior. So just call it out and be nice about it.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Claretta, on that. Great. So let's move on to the next question. Great. So what are your opinions on feminism and why are you so passionate about women leadership? Maria, you got your hands up.
Yeah, that was my real hand, not my artificial hand, by the way. Look, for me, feminism is really about allowing women to be all they aspire to be and can be, making sure they're given equal opportunities and addressing the biases and balances that get in the way of these sort of opportunities. So for me, it's such, when you think about it, that 50% of our population are female, and what an amazing resource that we underutilise, particularly in leadership roles. And so my feeling is that we've got to do everything we can to empower women and support women, and also understand the challenges women face, not just in terms of biases in the workshop, but also in life choices as well, particularly around family and commitments around that, because there's a lot of successful women. I've had amazing role models who have got on to have children of their own and have very successful careers. But we need to recognise we need to support that and really break down these barriers really that are holding women back.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing. What about Laia? Do you have anything to add on this question?
Completely agree with Maria and everything that she said. But I always go back to my point on, in order to break those barriers, we need to have the conversations, whether they're about salaries, because businesses don't really like it when we ask about it, sharing with males allies and talking about it with your male colleagues, so that they don't also know what challenges you're facing, but we're also giving them the opportunity to become our allies and work with us together in like women breaking the glass ceiling.
And there is one question in the Q&A session, in the Q&A app, that I'd like to address because it's very related to this one. So the question is, so in academia, increased recognition of teaching, service, and contribution to the community has helped promote female careers. Is there an analogy in the industry where they, like, you know, recognition for promoting female careers?
I can provide a brief answer here. I think something that I think has historically often been under-recognized in industry, that and is hard to often recognize, is glue work. The work of you know, it's not the people who are like doing the actual kind of project necessarily. It's the people who are linking everyone together, making sure that the roadblocks are removed, making sure people are staying in sync, making sure that if issues are coming up, that they're being raised at appropriate times. And this is often kind of very invisible because it can often be very intangible. Like you can't put a mark on coordination from the finished product or the finished the finished collaboration or whatever the end result is. But without it, nothing gets done. Things grind to a halt, things run late, things don't match the requirements that you have. And it is sort of recognized, at least sort of within Google, that often this sort of glue work often falls on the shoulders of some of the underrepresented groups for a whole number of different reasons. And so trying to really quantify it and call it out and identify that it's crucial, just as crucial as, at least in software engineering, the person who is pumping out all the code, or in doing all of the kind of spreadsheet work, or doing all of the analysis. Like that glue work is just as important and just as worthy of recognition, and it disproportionately falls on the shoulders of people who are already marginalized in industry.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing, Dominic. So those are really great advice and suggestions, and just sharing a little bit of your experiences. So right now, our chat, our Slido platform is really active. I see a lot of good questions on here, so it's really exciting. So yeah, we'll start our first public Q&A question. Let's start with the first one. How do you have uncomfortable conversation without risking your career? This is a really good question because I'm really interested to know too. Does anyone want to start? Yep, Claretta, please.
I think it's very important to have a good understanding of what your risk appetite is, how far you're willing to go, or what you believe in. And always look for allies, because there are always allies out there, and the good allies will make themselves known. But you have to weigh your pros and cons, but also know that if you do get into something that is not what you wanted, things will always change, and there will always be a different outcome than the one you're currently in. But those conversations need to be had, and if you are unable to have those conversations directly, perhaps indirectly. There have been, so many instances of organizations being called out on social media. If there is good enough reason, make some noise and make yourself heard.
Thank you.
Yeah, Maria, you have your hands up.
Yeah, look, I agree with Claretta, and I'd also add it's good to speak to mentors. I always strongly encourage people to have mentors in their careers and talk through how you're going to approach the problem, how you're going to approach the conversation. I sometimes think doing a little bit of planning about what the issue is, what you want to happen, and what you perceive the outcome is going to be is something it's really important to talk about it and even practice saying what you're going to say, because having those uncomfortable conversations, sometimes people get angry, sometimes they get emotional, or sometimes they go in there very calm, but because of the reaction of the other person, they get very upset or very emotional and don't get the message across. So actually thinking through all those scenarios in your mind on what I would do if X happens or that happens, just so you're prepared, but really having a good mentor to just talk it through and seeing how you're going to approach it and planning that approach is quite important. But being prepared that you may not always get the outcome you want, but it's important you at least express what you want to get across and what you'd like to get out of it.
Thank you, Maria, for such a good insight. And I think we also have the very linked question. So uncomfortable conversation can cause, the risk of sabotaging your career with this uncomfortable conversation can also lead to actually sabotaging and putting yourself down at work. So the question that got 4 likes. What if it's the other woman who is sabotaging or putting you down at work?
Yes, or any advice or how do you deal with the situation when people come across with this? Yep. Any of our panelists would like to speak up on this question? Yes, your hands up.
Sure. I think it's important to, when any of these situations happen, just remember that it's not really a reflection of yourself, but rather what their insecurities are, how people, the education that they had, their backgrounds, their environments. So even though it's really difficult, because I've been there and I know how hard it is, I think it's something to keep in mind at all points. And then going back to what Claretta said before, it's assessing your pros and your cons and seeing whether it's worth you talking about it and expressing it. It's obviously very different if the situation happens with a colleague or with your boss or someone with more power. If it's a colleague, I would always advise to talk about it with this person because they may be aware of what they're doing, they may not. We all have our own insecurities and take things differently. If it's a boss or someone in a position of power, I would suggest, yes. So looking at your pros and your cons and, having the consequences of you talking about it very clear, and then just deciding whether it's worth the risk or it's affecting you as much as you need to. I'm one to believe that no one should work in an environment where they don't feel safe, comfortable, heard. So that would be really important for me personally, and I will always address it. But of course, everybody is different. So knowing where your boundaries are, I think it's really important.
Brilliant. That's really great advice on that. So yeah, any other of our panelists would like to address on this question? Yes, Claretta.
I know it's extremely disappointing when, as a woman, you find that another woman is sabotaging you or putting you down, but a true feminist does not discriminate. And so you deal with it just as you would deal with anybody else. Women need to be called out too. It happens a lot. Sometimes it's not intentional. I'd say most of the time it's not intentional because we are brought up in this environment where we accept that women have certain rules and men have different ones, and women have to stay within their bounds. And sometimes it comes out of frustration when they see another woman breaking those chains that bind them. So again, just call it out, have that conversation, and make it clear that you won't be tolerant of such behavior and take it up with, you know, a mentor, with an ally, and work your way through it. But like Laia said, don't just sit down and take it. And definitely no one should work in an environment that has this happening all the time.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing. So I guess we could move on to another most liked questions. It would be, in academia, increased recognition of teaching service and contribution to the community has helped promote female careers. Is there an analogy in the industry?
Yeah, I think this question was partially covered by Dominick, but let's invite other panelists to share your thoughts. Claretta, do you have your hands up?
Sorry, I didn't lower it from the previous question.
Do you have any, like, would you like to add on a little bit on this question?
I think that in a similar way, women are often relegated to roles, like Dom said, of, you know, coordinating things, organizing things, cat herding, you know, just getting people together to come to a meeting, taking minutes, making sure everything's filed properly. That's the sort of thing that often gets relegated to women. I don't think that's different, whether it's industry or academia. In terms of actual careers that have been promoted because of that, I'd say perhaps creativity. Women are good problem solvers. They think out of the box. And I feel like there are careers where that sort of attitude has benefited women, having that drive and creativity and problem solving skills. But yeah, a lot of the caring and the coordinating and the caretaking, all the invisible work, falls to women.
Thank you, Claretta, for this, for that wisdom. So we also have a question regarding how to keep motivating yourself as a woman, especially during the lockdown environment. So I just combined two questions. So how to keep, you know, having that multitasking when you are working from home and then self-doubt at the same time, meeting challenges, or when you're feeling tired. Yes, Maria?
I think it's really important to carve some time out for yourself in any day, and because it's hard to motivate yourself if you're not giving yourself time out and giving you time. And so I think it's really important. I know it's a challenge sometimes when people have family and stuff to look after, but having some time that, you know, is preserved for you to give you some mental health space, as well as physical space, whether it's, you know, exercise, etc. Look, it is hard. We all get tired. It all gets too much. Sometimes, you know, you wish you were a kid and you could run away and think, I've got this pile of work and how am I going to do it? And I've got these staff to motivate. And I don't know, you just, you do pick yourself up and do it, but you get motivated. I think you're motivated to keep going when it's something you're passionate about, but you really do have to look after yourself, your health, your well-being, your family. Work will always be there, but, you know, if you ignore all those other key factors, they may not be there, and they're more important than any job you ever do, is to look after yourself. So, you know, take some time out, take some leave, but do something to help yourself first, and then the rest will flow, is my feeling.
Sorry, thank you. And also I would like to ask Laia to discuss that one, because you're a female entrepreneur, and that, which means you're always keeping yourself motivated to keep your business running. So yeah, I would like to hear from you.
Yes, so I completely agree with Maria. I think self-care is really, really important. Taking time for yourself, taking time outside the business in order to be clear about what the strategy is and your goals are. But then also being very honest with yourself about what is it that you want and what your goals are. Sometimes I felt that we can sort of lie to ourselves in terms of what are the things that we're supposed to want are the thing versus the things that we really want. So I think being honest with yourself about it and being very clear about your goals and objectives, it's also as important as self-care, because that's what's going to keep you going.
Thank you. And Dominic.
Yeah, I think one thing that's sort of important to think about, I think, is your support network and sort of the sort of circumstances in which you're kind of living in, because often sort of a lack of motivation when you run into challenges or at work can be due to the fact that not everything is you're not in a position where you can successfully take it on, and that's something I think Maria was really alluding to there. And it might be that you just don't have the support that you need to be able to take this on. It might be that you're having to carry more of a burden of you know, the housework or chores or all of the everyday pieces of existence to then add on top of a stressful job at home in the middle of a pandemic. Like it just sort of stacks on top of each other. And so I think I really want to reiterate sort of Maria's point of, like, you know, work will be there, you know, again tomorrow and the day after and the week after, right? And making sure that you are in a place where you're able to succeed. If you're not able to meet challenges right now, that might not be just because you can't meet them. It might be because you're not in a well-supported place to be able to meet them. And putting that right first is probably the most sustainable solution there.
Great. Thank you so much for all the panelists that answering that question. Definitely really inspiring. So let's move on to next question. Do you have any tips for kickstarting a career? Further education with work experiences feels risky, but finding meaningful work is hard for further education. Yes, Claretta.
I'd say don't underestimate the kind of experience and exposure that you get even doing things while you're studying. For all of you who are on the Postgraduate Council, these are positions of leadership that you've taken on. These are additional responsibilities you've taken on to whatever else that you're studying. And you will learn things there about working with people, about running a committee, about budgeting. All of these are soft skills that will serve you in good stead when it comes to actually getting a job. And also reach out to people, network. Don't be afraid of offering your time as a volunteer within a certain limit. Of course, you don't want to be exploited, but to just, people are fine with just being shadowed. Like, ask someone, can I just find out what your day is like? A lot of people are kinder than you think they are. And it's just about making yourself visible. And the most learning that you will do will be on the job. Of course, there's, training for technical things, but people really don't hire for knowledge. They don't hire for education. They hire for attitude. They hire for, communication skills, and the rest will come. The skills will come. So that's how you should see yourself as, kickstarting your career. Don't just think you have to attain all these letters after your name. They'll come in due course.
Brilliant. All right, Maria, see your hands up.
Just very, very quickly, I'll just add also to what Claretta said. You highlighted, Claretta, things like being on committees at university and leadership roles. And what I often see in CVs, people just list these. And instead of actually talking about their leadership and attributes upfront about what they've gained from this, so even though you may not have work experience, you really have gained a lot of attributes. And even being at university, being able to research and analyze data, this is all things you're trained for. But there is a tendency in academia, once you've done a course, to just list what you've done without actually telling the person, what the attributes you've gained or, that you've got to do that. So I think I agree, a lot of, particularly, early in your career, you're going to be trained on the job, but what they're looking is for attitude and attributes that you might be bringing to that position.
Yes, and Dominic.
Yeah, I think something that a piece of advice that I often give here is essentially find a niche where sort of you're able to kind of do things just that little bit better or more effectively, or smarter, or any sort of little bit more than other people. And I think from my own career, so I came to Google after doing a PhD where I wrote a lot. I had to write a whole thesis and academic papers and do a lot of reading, and so and give presentations. And so something that I was sort of quite good at was I was never afraid to go talk to other people and spread ideas and give presentations and write documents. And software engineers are stereotypically very bad at writing things and wanting to communicate and talk around. And so I was sort of able to leverage that into sort of a bunch of success, because I was willing to be the person to go and do that talking. And it was something that I was reasonably good at, and it didn't take me a lot of effort to do it compared to other people. And so I guess, if you can find those things which you're able to kind of more comfortably do or more capably do, even if it's just a small difference, right? There's a lot of value in ending up in doing things which other people are sort of less enticed by, but you're able to kind of drive that forward. So that's something that I've kind of always tried to sort of find, like, where am I best able to do something? Where can I do it just a bit better than someone else, and let that shine through, and let my support network, my mentors and my managers sort of know that and help support me through that. So that's how I kind of think about what might be next, or what's that step that I can take to kind of kickstart a new project, a new career, a new direction.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing, Dominic. So it's actually one more question to relate to that question with like kickstarting career. There's a question for Laia. You find yourself in Bali. Do you find that it's difficult to have the Australian presence a barrier to some ventures and opportunity?
So no, but the way I've set up my businesses is that regardless of where I am in the world, they function. Regardless of whether I am not there or I am, my business functions. So I've created a team of people that are across the world who support me, who are incredibly good at what they do. And for me, when I started my entrepreneurial journey, the most important thing was freedom. And for me, freedom, it just means being anywhere in the world and having a flexible schedule. And it means something very different for everybody, but that's what it means for me. And so the way I've set everything up is that there was a pandemic, and I've been currently stuck in Bali for 2 years almost, and it hasn't had any effect on myself and my business.
Thank you, Laia, for sharing. So with a heavy heart, I have to say that we come to the end of what has been a spectacular panel discussion. So today's panel discussion was part of UNSW Diversity Week. We have learned, grown, and we have heard different insights about women in STEM and supporting women in a career. So to thank all speakers for the day, I'd like to invite the PGC Vice President, Diana Zhang, to thank all speakers for today.
Thanks so much, Salter, for the kind introduction. I am conscious that we are over time, so I'll keep this very brief. On behalf of the Postgraduate Council, I'd like to thank our amazing guests for this wonderful panel discussion on how we can increase and empower female identifying students and aspiring leaders in STEM and entrepreneurship. I'd also like to give a big thank you to the PGC Career Development and Women in STEM Committee for organising tonight's event. So thank you to our wonderful co-hosts, Salter and Emmy, as well as Hang, Joanne, Rabia, Ngozi, Daphne, Kathy, and Min, for all of your hard work behind the scenes. So please do join me in clicking the clapping hands icon below. Tonight, we've been inspired and we've been encouraged by our STEM superstars on how we can empower each other in this cause. Well, it is now up to us to carry the torch forward because change starts with all of us. And as always, the Postgraduate Council is here if you need help or support. So do make sure you follow us on social media to join our next exciting networking event. Back to you guys.
All right, once again, thank you so much, Maria, Laia, Dominic, and Claretta, and everyone that has joined us today. I have to say, I apologize with, running out of time, so we couldn't answer everyone's questions, and I appreciate all the, everyone being so active on asking our questions. So yeah, I hope this event inspires you all, and with the inspirational words from all our speakers today, you'll be motivated for your future career and personal journey in STEM, entrepreneurship, and as a future leader. So please do stay updated with UNSW Postgraduate Council for future exciting socials and educational events. Feel free to stay to chat with our team, and we hope to see you very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone.